introduce to you Kenneth Hunter, who will MC and put this event together. So let's welcome Kenneth.
Thank you, Mr. Ferris, and to everybody that's here, I wish you all a pleasant good morning. We have a wonderful panel here today to talk about several subjects related to economic growth here in our region as well as across the state and the nation. And we're going to begin with two panelists that are going to be talking primarily about the role of our community college system and especially our two community colleges, Nash and Edgecombe, in the important factor of workforce development, not just in the various programs that they offer directly with respect to industry, but also the broader programs that enable their students to pursue a lifelong path of learning for their future. Our first panelist will be Bethany Green. Bethany is a regional economist at the Charlotte branch of the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond. And in this role, Bethany monitors regional economic trends and conducts outreach activities in both North and South Carolina. Before joining the Richmond Fed, Bethany spent 4 years at the Denver branch of the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City, where she supported regional research and outreach efforts in the Mountain West region. Bethany has a bachelor's degree in economics from Emory University and a master's degree in data analytics and public policy from Johns Hopkins University. Bethany, if you'd please join us on the stage. And following Bethany will be Dr. Jeff Cox. Dr. Jeffrey A. Cox is the 11th president of the North Carolina Community Colleges system. He is a native of Allegheny County, North Carolina, and he brings over 3 decades of academic and leadership experience. He earned his Bachelor of Science degree in English Secondary Education, as well as a Master's of School Administration from Appalachian State University, and he also holds a doctorate in educational leadership from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. His career began as a teacher in Greenville and Sparta. He received the North Carolina Principal Fellow Scholarship. He also served as an assistant principal at Indian Trail Elementary School, as well as a principal at Benton Heights Elementary. His leadership extended to roles as an assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction with Lee County Schools. In 2005, he became superintendent for Allegheny County, achieving remarkable academic success for his students. He was later appointed to the state education boards and also received an Aspen Presidential Fellow for Community College Excellence in 2017 as he continued to expand his career and was serving as president of Wilkes Community College. He, along with his wife Reba and 3 sons, Dylan, Evan, and Zach, continue to make impactful contributions to education. Dr. Cox? We also have 2 wonderful panelists here to talk about the economy overall, as well as specifically the economy and the activities that we have seen this past year and we're going to be seeing in the future for the Rocky Mountain region. First, Dr. Mushin Katabi. He is the Associate Professor of Economics for the Cameron School of Business at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. Dr. Katabi has been with the faculty at UNC Wilmington since 2021. He earned his PhD in economics from Oklahoma State University in 2012, and he is an applied microeconomist with 2 main streams of research: the effect of natural resources on households and communities, as well as the socioeconomic effects of unconditional cash transfers. And he has been published in numerous journals such as the Review of Economics and Statistics, Journal of Environmental Economics and Management, and the Journal of Regional Science. Throughout his career, including during his time prior to UNC Wilmington when he was serving at the University of Alaska at Anchorage, rather kind of different climate than here, he has, of course, worked significantly on developing regional economic forecasts, and he has been very involved the last couple of years in Wilmington and also throughout the state of North Carolina in helping many different groups and individuals better understand how the economy is going and the effects of social and public policy on economic activity across the state of North Carolina. Dr. Katabi? And last and certainly not least is the mayor of the city of Rocky Mount, the Honorable Sandy Robertson. He was first elected in 2019, and of course he was re-elected just last year. Mayor Sandy Robertson has taken a leadership role on top issues including safer neighborhoods, job training, downtown development, stronger educational opportunities, affordable housing, and also encouraging our community to work together as one Rocky Mount. He, of course, is a Rocky Mount native and well-known entrepreneur with over 30 years of experience in business management. He has won multiple awards, including he's a 2022 Rocky Mount Area Chamber of Commerce Distinguished Citizen of the Year, 2022 Elks Lodge Flag recipient, the 2021 Distinguished Citizen of the Year award by the Northern District of the East Carolina Council of Boy Scouts of America, and also was a finalist at one time for the NEAR Entrepreneurship Award. Mayor Robertson. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Green to kick us off with her presentation.
All right, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So I'm Bethany Green. I am a regional economist with the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond. I'm located in their Charlotte branch, so not too far. But today, it's a little bit different for me in terms of topic, but today I'm going to be talking about community colleges and their role in workforce development. So here at the Fed, it may be a surprise to some people, we do a lot of research on community colleges and what's going on with community colleges in our region being the Carolinas, Virginia, Maryland, and West Virginia. And we really want to know about the success of these institutions because they play such a large role in the development of our workforce. So I'm going to be going over that today, and also going to be talking about some trends that we're seeing in higher ed and what that means for the community college space in general. All right. All right. So like I said before, when you think about the Fed, you typically don't think about community colleges, because people are simply thinking about inflation. They're thinking about interest rates. Well, today I'm going to talk about why the Fed cares so much. So here at the Fed, we have two things that we're trying to accomplish. One, price stability, and that's the one thing that most people are familiar with. When you think about inflation, when you think about price growth, the Fed wants to keep prices growing at a low and stable rate, which is 2%. So it's a very specified goal that we have. Now we also have another side of our mandate, and that is maximum employment. That's a little bit more vague, but how I like to think about it and how a lot of my colleagues like to think about it is like this. Does everyone who wants to engage in the labor force, does everyone who wants a job, are they able to find one? Okay, so we want to think about how can we support our labor force, how can we seek opportunities to train our labor force and get these people attached to the labor market. So that's where community colleges come in, because they provide great educational opportunities in order to train our workforce and meet the needs of our employers in our communities. So that's why the Fed cares so much about community colleges. And I'll talk a little bit more about the work we're doing, the research that we have, and also we have a survey that you all may be interested in on community colleges. All right, so this is an image that we like to think about when it comes to transitioning from education to the workforce. So this is an image that shows that there is a pipeline that is leaking. Okay, so basically what this is showing is that at every stage in someone's educational attainment, there is a bit less leakage as they move further up. So as you can see here, there's the most leakage, or people being able to transition from education to the workforce is more difficult at that stage. So as you can see, that's much more difficult for people with less than a high school diploma, and a lot easier for those with a professional degree. So community colleges really play a large role in reducing this concept of leakage. So what community colleges can do, one, they can propel people into achieving higher educational attainment, but also they provide credentialing, whether that be short-term credentialing, non-credit degree programs, a lot of things that allow people to make an easier transition into the workforce and prevent some of that leakage. So community colleges play a large role in that. And we see this concept of leaking out of the labor force in the data. So this chart basically shows that at different stages of people's educational attainment, they are more or less likely to engage with the labor force. So as you can see here, people with less than a high school degree are the least likely to be in the labor force, whereas people with a bachelor's degree or higher are more likely to be in the labor force. And if you look closely at this image, what you can see here is that labor force participation for a couple of these groups is declining as well over the past couple of years. So it's something that we really do need to pay attention to. So this is another image of the labor force participation. And what you can see here is that in 2020, labor force participation declined quite a bit. It has recovered, but as you can see, it hasn't recovered to its 2019 level. So I'm sure you have heard, especially roughly 2 years ago, of these labor shortages, of a lot of employers finding it difficult to find employees to fill those positions, and how much strain that puts so much strain on employers, right? We're hearing a bit less of that now, but it's still relevant today. For a lot of employers, they can't find those people that have the skills that they need in order to do the work, right? So we're seeing less people being attached to the labor force. Some of this for demographic reasons, but I'll tell you later why community colleges can really play a great part in improving this number. Also, if you look at this by demographic, there are some interesting trends here too. What we are seeing is that the recovery for women's labor force participation rate has been a lot better than men. And if you look at it by race as well, we are seeing that Black men are seeing much more of an increase in their recovery, whereas white men are not seeing the same. So there are some interesting dynamics in the demographics of the labor force participation rate. All right, so this is a lot of talk about labor force participation, but really what I want to drive home is that we are seeing an issue, and this chart shows it. So what we're seeing is that when it comes to worker demand, there's a lot more worker demand than there is supply for that labor. And that's not something that we've seen in the past decades. As you can see, the gray line, which is the labor force, has been more than worker demand. So the opposite was happening. So there were a lot of people who wanted a job, who were in the labor force, but not enough open positions to fulfill that. Now we're seeing the opposite, where we have all of this labor demand, not enough people to fill that demand for labor. Okay, so with that issue, I think that this chart is really powerful. So this is basically showing that there are millions of Americans right now that do not have a job, that are not in the labor force, that are not looking for work currently, but they want a job, right? So when we think about maximizing our workforce potential, we think about maximizing this, these are some of the people that we're thinking about. Some of these people are discouraged workers, right? So maybe they looked for a job and they couldn't find one. Their skills were misaligned, or there are some life circumstances that don't allow them to be attached to the labor force. So that's where community colleges can really come in. That's because community colleges can upskill workers, and they also serve a larger variety of people. So people who need to be part-time because of life circumstances. People who are non-traditional students. Maybe people who want a career change, have dropped out of the labor force for a while and kind of want to change their occupation or industry. Community colleges provide a way, a pathway to get people attached to the labor force, especially people who are discouraged, and getting those people off of the sidelines into the labor force. So community colleges are really important in that way. All right, so what does this mean for higher ed? We know, like I said before, that there are returns to education. As you can see here, this basically shows that earnings increase, on average of course, they increase as people's educational attainment goes up. So as you can see, that's what this chart is showing. But I'm sure you all have heard this before. I know that I have from people in my life. People are skeptical about the returns to education. I think a lot of people are asking themselves, okay, if I go to school for 4 years, will I get a return on that investment, especially if they're taking out debt, right? Especially if it's this cost. Is it worth it to go to school, graduate, and not be able to find a job? So a lot of people are questioning, okay, is higher ed worth it? And we're actually seeing this show up in enrollment data. Over the past 10 years, we have seen a decline in enrollment in higher ed. However, what we have seen more recently, what this chart shows actually, is that in 2020, we did see a pretty large dip in enrollment for two-year schools, for community colleges. But if you look at the most recent data, this is 2023 to 2024, we've seen quite a jump in enrollment, right? So we're seeing a rebound for community college enrollment. And when we look even further into the data, what we're seeing is that there's also a shift in what people want to study. So that orange bar, I think, is very, very striking if you see how large it is. That is basically showing that where we're seeing the most growth for community colleges is community colleges with larger vocational programs. Right? So it definitely seems as though people are shifting their ideas of what they want to do. We're also seeing that anecdotally, we don't have the data for this, but we're hearing anecdotally that people are kind of shifting towards shorter term credentialing, also non-credit credentials, non-credit degrees, non-credit programs, sorry. So we're seeing this shift when it comes to students in terms of what they want to study. They want to be workforce ready, right? They want to make sure that when they're investing into a program that they'll be able to find a job after. And that's why community colleges can really work well in this space, because not only are they providing the credentialing, they're also connecting people to the workforce directly with those workforce partnerships. So it's really important there. All right, so this is my lastly, I'll just summarize that more jobs in the future are gonna require a post-secondary credential. Most growth is being seen in non-degree credentials, and community colleges are well positioned to provide these credentials. So I expect to see a lot of growth there. And then I'll go back to that statistic about those who want to work, but they're not currently working for whatever reason. I think what's important here is really identifying those people. Who are those people, and how can we attract them to different programs in the community college space? And also, what do they need in order to be successful in these programs? Because a lot of them have different life circumstances that may prevent them from being successful. So thinking about wraparound services that institutions can provide is also important in kind of getting these people off the sidelines and into the workforce. All right. So lastly, I'll highlight, if anyone's interested in our community college work at the Fed, you can scan this QR code to learn more. So my colleague, Laura Ulrich, is just an amazing person in this space. She's actually director of the Community College Initiative, and she does a lot of work in this space. She has a blog, and also she started the Community College Outcomes Survey. We just released our results a couple weeks ago. So if you're interested in any of that, definitely scan that QR code. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Bethany. It was a very good presentation, and I had a chance to tune in to when Dr. Ulrich presented the information from that first round of their outcomes project, and there's a lot of great information, and you certainly did a great job of summarizing some pieces of that, and obviously tying into the performance of our community colleges. So we'd like to now, with Dr. Cox, I believe you wanted to take a couple of questions related to this. So I'll start off. Of course, you've had a chance to listen to what Ms. Green has shared, and also the research that's been provided by the Richmond Fed. So what has stuck out to you? What stuck out to you most, and how do these national and district trends compare with what you are seeing with the community colleges here in North Carolina?
Yeah, well, thank you. So I think what she's presented is right on the money. it's exactly what we're seeing across our 58 community colleges across the entire state. So I think the data trends are certainly there. We've got an increasing population of students who are skeptical about the four-year degree and the return on investment. Our shift has been more toward the short-term credential. We've been talking about that for the last year. We've actually been developing a new business model we're calling Propel NC. I hope you've heard of it over the last year. But it's realigning our program. It's I think, the most substantive change we've had in our business model in the last couple of decades at least. But it's really trying to position our colleges better to eliminate any differences in funding between these short-term credential programs and our two-year degree programs. It also, we're asking the legislature for about $93 million investment, which sounds like a big number, but with a $1.5 billion budget for our community college system, it's really fairly marginal with what the return, I think, could be. So part of that plan is to ask the legislature to fund programs that are in high demand and pay a high wage at a little bit higher level than other courses. If you think about that, the rationale is, if you think about a nursing program, every community across the state needs more nurses, right? Pick one, they all do. Well, our nursing programs, with the way that we're funded, you can't find a nursing instructor for what we have historically paid our instructors. We've had to elevate their salaries just to be able to attract folks into the profession. So every time that Greg or Lou, either one, enrolls another nursing student, they're losing more money. So they're doing it because the communities need them to do that. But we want to fix the funding model so it's sustainable. The legislature's made great investments in short-term investments to start up and expand programs, but we've got to get sustainable funding so we can continue that and build upon that. But the trend lines are there for sure. I agree with everything that she has presented here. I would just say in closing that across all of our state, in almost every community, we've got about 40% or so of our high school students who are not pursuing any kind of post-secondary education. We've also got a huge adult population who are undereducated and whose skills are misaligned to the labor market. There are great jobs out there. We're seeing over and over again across our communities, great jobs. Most of them don't require four-year degrees, many of them not even two-year degrees, but almost all the really well-paying jobs require some kind of post-secondary degree. We've got to do a lot better job of being a matchmaker. I call our community colleges a bridge between business and industry, who are desperate for employees with the skill set that they need, and the individual citizens across our state who are looking for a better tomorrow, looking for a better income. They want a better job, but they just don't know how to get connected together. That's what we do, and that's what we've got to do an even better and better job of doing.
Thank you very much. And I will say, I think you did a really good job answering another question I had with respect to the gap that Ms. Green talked about, approximately 5.5 million Americans who want to work. Unfortunately, they're not actively looking right now. And I imagine that does include thousands throughout North Carolina. Are there any other strategies? You've also talked about Propel NC. Are there other strategies that y'all are pursuing to try to connect with this segment of the workforce?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of other significant populations that we're really trying to zero in on. One is what we call the opportunity youth. But these are people between 16 and 25 who are not in school, they're not employed, they're not in the military, they're just kind of disengaged. So we're kind of actively pursuing that population to try to get them connected to a better tomorrow. We're expanding apprenticeship programs. This is one thing I would tell this audience for sure. Our community colleges are awesome. All across every community across the state, they're fantastic, but they can't do it alone. It requires partnership with business and industry. And this is true for that Opportunity Youth group. We're also doing significant work with the adult population. More than half of our students across the state and all of our community colleges are 25 years or older. They're adults. They don't have the luxury of just stopping their jobs and coming back to school full-time and for 2 to 4 years to get a degree, they've got families to feed. They've got responsibilities to take care of. So we have to be joined at the hip with business and industry to think about how do we support folks joining the economy through apprenticeship programs, internships, earn while you learn kinds of programs, so that people are working and gainfully employed and enrolled in one of our community colleges, picking up those skills that business and industry need them to have to be productive employees.
Thank you very much. That's excellent information. And tying into that, one of the challenges, of course, that community colleges have is, I think you are alluding to, is the issue with not just enrollment, but also program completion. That's something that I've heard some about. And so what are some of the other strategies that you may be looking at to sustain, grow enrollment, also ensure program completion, especially when we hear about things like the enrollment cliff with respect to demographics? What are some things that you're looking to address that?
So a couple of quick things. If you look across our great state, we've got pockets of prosperity that are just exploding. And I just drove from one of those centers in Raleigh, and you all know what the expansion of that is, an opportunity. You're just drowning in opportunity in several areas of our state. But there are many, many more areas that are rural, where you're having population declines. I'm from rural Allegheny County, so I've lived this my whole life. It is a real sensitive place for me, what I want us to work harder on. But we know that we're losing high school population. So for our community colleges, just to stay stable with enrollment, we've got to do a much better job of capturing all the students who are coming out of high school and getting them to get connected with some kind of credential program. And again, for most of those students who are choosing not to attend, they're not consuming higher ed now, it's not going to be that they're just suddenly going to change their mind and go get a 4-year degree. In my view, the only entry point for them is going to be linking them up with a short-term credential that's paired directly with a job on the other side. And where we've seen really, really high success rates is when business and industry step in and take ownership with the community colleges to say, we've got a dire need for truck drivers in our community. So we're going to partner with the community college, and if you can get us X number of trained truck drivers, we will hire them. If students know there's a commitment on the other end, if I go through this 16-week program in IT support, if I know I'm going to be able to get a job with a company at the other side, that makes it real and tangible for that student. It makes it a lot easier for the community colleges to go out and recruit students into those programs. It's much more challenging if we just say, well, just, come on, get the degree, and, probably it'll work out for you. Maybe you'll get a job on the other side. So that close partnership with business and industry, I can't underscore that enough. We're really trying to expand apprenticeships across the state. For folks who are doing that, businesses and industries who are really deep in apprenticeship programs, they will tell you it's the best money and time investment they spend, because those apprentices, a very high percentage of them stay on and continue to be employees with the company, and those employees are stickier, they stay longer than folks who haven't gone through apprenticeship programs. So it's a great investment. Again, if you're out there in business and industry and you're not currently taking advantage of that, I encourage you to reach out to Lou or Greg here at the community and see what you can do to get a program set up for your business.
That's wonderful information. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, and we look forward to perhaps answering some questions from the audience a little later on. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's give Dr. Cox a hand. Next up, Dr. Cox, would you like to?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm glad Jeff didn't use slides, because we're about to go through death by PowerPoint. I apologize. Kenneth mentioned that I used to be a faculty member at the University of Alaska, and since the temperature dropped about 4 days ago, people keep coming up to me and going, "This must feel great." Nope. Just because I lived in Alaska for a decade does not mean that 41 degrees feels good. Anyway, What I'm going to try to do is try to be concise, which I have a hard time doing, but really try to give you an overview of what's been going on at the national level. The landscape has changed dramatically over the last few months, and then kind of zoom in on the state and the region and try to just paint a picture, right? And so I always tell people that when I give these kind of economic outlooks, I'm not telling you what to think. I'm going to try to paint a picture of what's going on, where we currently are, and where we're potentially heading. And then I'm going to present some caveats. I'm an economist, and so the joke is there is no one-handed economist, because I'm going to contradict myself about 6 times. But, you can ignore this. This is what we're going to go through. It looks intimidating. I promise it'll go quickly. I always like to start my talks by basically just telling people what I'm about to tell them. Just in case you get bored and you want to play on TikTok or leave, I want you to know what you would potentially miss. So at the national level, the labor market has held up remarkably well. And that's been surprising. A lot of economists have egg on their face because we thought that the consumer was going to crack months ago and that the labor market was going to weaken. It really didn't. Hiring has slowed quite considerably, but the labor market has remained resilient. The consumer has remained resilient. We are seeing some cracks under the surface, and one of the things that's kind of a little bit troubling is that we're seeing credit card delinquencies start to creep up right now. And that's something that's worth thinking about. And so I don't want to say the labor market is a tale of two cities, but there are pockets that are growing really fast, that are doing remarkably well, and then you're starting to see foot traffic in certain establishments start to slow down. Some consumers are starting to struggle, and then as Bethany explained nicely, this labor market story is very much tied to the inflation story, right? And so the Fed's been fighting inflation now for 1.5 years. They've made an immense amount of progress. However, there are now questions about, is inflation sticky enough? Are they potentially going to get to that elusive 2%, or are there going to be some challenges for us to potentially get there? And it's impossible to not talk about the national economy without talking about policy. Obviously, we just had an election, and to me, there are obviously a lot of things that we can talk about, but there are 3 things from a purely economic standpoint that are worth mentioning. There are tariffs, obviously, there is taxes, and then there is immigration. Tariffs have consumed a lot of oxygen over the last few months, and tariffs, historically, what do we know about tariffs from a purely textbook situation, but also from a historical situation, is that tariffs are going to, A, potentially raise prices, B, they're going to decrease imports, C, they may raise revenues in the short run, right? So the question that we need to think about, aside from whether or not we should impose them, is could potentially the imposition of tariffs complicate the Federal Reserve's mission? Now, if you want to think about tariffs, clearly you need to think, okay, they're going to raise prices, but that increase in prices may not necessarily affect the path of inflation, because it's a one-time increase in prices. It's going to complicate the story in the short run, but may not actually influence the inflation rate story. But it's definitely worth thinking about, and there's no doubt that we're going to feel the effect of tariffs, right? And so, irrespective about how you feel about the world, tariffs are going to be borne by the consumer to a certain extent. Then there's the immigration piece, and again, economically speaking, the 2 angles that I keep thinking about are the labor force angle, right? And so, by most estimates, there are 10 to 11 million people who could be affected by this enforcement strategy, and by some estimates, 40% of this population works in the construction sector. And we've been obviously talking about an affordability crisis, so one of the things where inflation could rear its ugly head is in the construction sector, in the farming sector, in the retail sector, where potentially this population is employed. So there are some things that are potentially going to get complicated here in the short run, and I don't know to what extent these decisions are going to affect the decisions that the Federal Reserve has been making. They've kind of been very one-minded over the last few months in saying we're going to cut rates. That may change if some of these policies take place. And then you have the tax question, where clearly if we do see reductions in taxes, that's going to boost economic growth, at least in the short run, but could potentially also put upward pressure on prices if we grow faster than what we've been growing recently. So the reason I'm mentioning this is because it's impossible to think about the Fed's decisions independently from these things. Similar to what happened during the stimulus situation, the Fed obviously is not responsible for the fiscal stimulus, but they obviously ended up having to deal with the consequences that were made on the fiscal side. So we don't care that much about the national economy. Let's talk about things that we actually care about. North Carolina has been growing remarkably fast as a state. It's obviously been one of the winners from COVID. We've grown a lot for a couple of different reasons. One, obviously, companies have voted with their feet and are moving at an increasing pace to these pockets of prosperity that Jeff mentioned, but we also have had people vote with their feet, right? And so the migration story, meaning people moving from other states to North Carolina, has been remarkable, and those people have brought significant amount of money with them. So the state as a whole has added about 9% more jobs since 2019, and we have 5 metropolitan areas that have added 10% or more jobs, right? And that growth, one of the things that the way I frame this conversation for people is, you need to think about 2 things. You need to think about, okay, how much of this growth is sustainable? Are the tailwinds that caused this growth permanent, or were they temporary, meaning COVID-driven? And we have some of these tailwinds that are fading because they were driven by remote work, they were driven by people retiring early, and some of the tailwinds are permanent in that as a result of agglomeration, now we have these cities that are winners, that are continuing to win, that are continuing to grow. As you can see, Rocky Mount has lagged some of this growth, but one of the things that's interesting to think about is that many of the quote-unquote winners, I apologize for the air quotes, have started to slow down a little bit. Like almost all of North Carolina is still growing, but it's growing at a slower pace, and we're reverting back to pre-pandemic growth rates. One of the real big challenges of doing economic forecasting, or any type of forecasting, is do you take the last 3 years worth of growth for granted and extrapolate forward? Or do you say, I'm gonna toss that data aside because it's nonsensical and we were cooped up for a long time and people were spending like drunken sailors and we can't really, I mean, they still were, but. And then at the local level, I want to show you some things that I think you'll find interesting. I really like to think about income, and I like to think about income because it's much more reflective of how much money is being spent in an area. The Bureau of Economic Analysis releases data that they decompose into 3 buckets, and I'll show you some pictures here in a little bit. Those 3 buckets are earnings by place of residence, meaning wages and salaries. And then they say how much of the money that's flowing into your community is coming from federal transfers, and how much of the money that's flowing into your community is coming from investments. So those numbers that you're looking at there is the sum of all of the money that is in the 2 counties divided by the population of those 2 counties. Now, the personal incomes look fairly similar, which may be surprising, but the sources of income are very, very different, and they've changed a lot over time. In other words, Nash County has a significantly higher share of income coming from wages, while Edgecombe County has a lot more money coming in from federal transfers and from investments, and that picture has changed, and that potentially raises some important questions for you all as you think about policy. And then the housing market just breaks my brain. It's frozen. I joke and I say sellers are delusional and buyers are not interested. And really, that's to me the state of the housing market, right? And so sellers want 2021, 2022 prices, and buyers want 2018 prices, and something is going to have to give, right? And so Zillow is forecasting that prices in Rocky Mount are going to go up by 4.5% over the next year. Forecasts are a dime a dozen. I'm not endorsing their forecasts, but most forecasting companies are very, very bullish on housing prices. And one of the reasons for that is that even, for example, in the Rocky Mount Metro, housing inventory has creeped up by quite a bit, but it's only 63% of what it was in 2019. And that's the state in the vast majority of markets, right? And so inventory is just remarkably low. And again, the economists don't agree on anything except for the fact that if we want to deal seriously with the housing crisis, we need to build more, right? And so you can't fix this problem unless you relax supply, relax zoning, do things along that particular margin. So you're all welcome to just play on your phones for the next 10 minutes as I show you a bunch of pictures now. I've told you most things that I wanted to tell you. But I'm going to show you a couple of things about the national economy that I think matter. This first one just shows you, this is in hundreds of thousands, so it shows you the number of jobs that have been added at the national level relative to the same month last year. The last month for which we have complete data is October, and it shows that we added essentially 200,000 jobs. The reason I'm showing you that is the national economy is still doing well, but the rate at which we're adding jobs has been slowing, right? And to me, that's really the big story. Is the labor market undoubtedly is cooling. The Fed knows this, everybody knows this. There are pockets of the economy like tech that have cooled quite considerably. You have graduates that are waiting months and months for an interview. The labor market is still okay, but there is, again, this cooling that has occurred, and this is the thing that everybody in this room cares about, right? We've all complained about something costing more than we think it should, right? And so nobody wants to pay $12 for an average beer, but we all do it. But this is the picture that the Fed is happy about. This is inflation rate, and they're happy about this because they're getting closer and closer to that elusive 2%. However, the thing that I repeat all the time, and everybody here knows, is that just because they're getting closer to 2% does not mean that prices are going to go back down, right? And so prices on average are about 20 to 25% higher than they were pre-pandemic, and that's not changing anytime soon, right? And so the rate at which prices will be increasing going forward hopefully will be around the 2% mark, but it does not mean that we're going to see prices go back to those pre-pandemic levels. I always joke and I was going to say this is my favorite picture, but I don't have children. I keep saying this is my favorite picture as though pictures are my children, but that's not healthy. This is the savings rate. And when I say that people are spending like drunken sailors, we're not saving any money whatsoever, right? And so the two big spikes, so this is the savings rate, how much money people are putting aside after they get their paychecks, and it's at essentially historical lows because we're spending at a really fast rate. And then people are really, really worried about debt, but by most measures, this is debt as a share of disposable income, we're just back to pre-pandemic levels, right? So debt undoubtedly has been going up, but to me, the right measure of looking at debt is how much debt are we taking on relative to how much money we have, and this is debt as a share of disposable income, and it's basically smack back at pre-pandemic levels, but as you can see, we essentially paid off a ton of debt during the pandemic, and then obviously as we started going out, we started traveling, right? And so we came out of our coops. Now we're spending a lot of money and we're taking on debt, but we're continuing to spend. This is personal consumption expenditures adjusted for inflation, and we're spending at historic rates. And so this is the thing that really kind of, to me, probably the most important picture at the national level is if the consumer, so as the consumer goes, the national economy goes, and we're continuing to spend. However, we are being a lot more deliberate in our spending, and we're seeing a bifurcation in the economy in that the middle income, lower income consumer is pinching pennies, higher income individuals are still doing really well. So we're kind of seeing now this, not everybody is winning, there are winners and there are some losers, and the consumer is changing their behavior. I tell my students all the time, there's a story that came out on CNBC just recently that says Target is struggling, Walmart is doing really well, right? And so consumers are starting to think very carefully about where to allocate that dollar, and sellers that are selling to a population that's now potentially not saving as much is gonna be feeling those consequences. But this is the, I don't wanna say the only. If you have a negative view of the national economy, this is the picture that gives you real pause. This is delinquencies. This is credit card delinquencies, and this is the metric that's showing now that people are actually worse off from this dimension than they were pre-pandemic, and that's been climbing. Again, this is not saying that everybody is struggling, but delinquency rates have been creeping up, auto delinquency rates have been creeping up, and so clearly we have a segment of the population that took on potentially too much debt. We were experiencing historic increases in wages. That obviously has moderated quite a bit, and it does seem that there is a segment of the population that's suffering. And I really think that monitoring this in particular is potentially an important metric as we go forward. So enough talk about the national economy. I'm going to go through some of this fairly quickly. This is employment growth rate relative to 2019. So this is September 2024 relative to September 2019 at the metropolitan area. And as you can see, most metropolitan areas have grown quite considerably. Raleigh has led the way, has 15% more jobs than it did in 2019. Wilmington was second. Rocky Mount is lagging. It has basically 1% fewer jobs than it did pre-pandemic. But again, if you take a look at this from a statewide perspective, if there is a national economy that's brewing, North Carolina doesn't know about it, right? And so because the growth is still quite robust. However, when you kind of zoom back in, and this is just growth rate this year relative to the previous year, you see that the growth is still positive. Rocky Mount actually had positive growth this year relative to last year. So again, this is 2024 relative to 2023 using September data. What you see is a lot of the winners, Wilmington, Raleigh, are still growing, but they're growing at their pre-pandemic growth rates, right? And so again, coming back to my earlier point of you can't bet on that pandemic boost staying with us for much longer because a lot of money has come out of the system, a lot of the migration has subsided, and so now we're kind of seeing or rediscovering organic growth rate. You can't see this very well. The orange line is showing you average hourly earnings at the state level. I don't know how many of you think about this very often. The blue line is showing you average hourly earnings in Rocky Mount. Average hourly earnings at the state level have gone up by 30% between 2019 and 2024. In Wilmington, where I live, they've gone up by 50%, 50. And whenever I show that number, I say, if you know my dean or my chancellor, send them an email and tell them to give me a raise, because I certainly did not get a 50% raise. But if you did, congratulations. However, the thing that's important for you all is that relative to the statewide average, Rocky Mount only experienced about a 2.5% increase in average hourly wages during that same time span, right? So that's a big gulf between what's happened in wages at the state level versus the metropolitan area. And this is the decomposition that I'm going to spend quite a bit of time talking about, because I really think even if you zoned me out for the last 15 minutes, this really matters over here, because this is showing you, again, how much, think about it, this graph is showing you how much money is in your community. And so the decomposition there are three colors. Hopefully you can see them reasonably well. The dark blue is showing you earnings by place of residence. Think about those as wages and salaries. The light blue is showing you personal transfers. That's money coming in from the federal government. And the red is showing you investments. And as I was saying earlier at the beginning of the talk, the source of money differs quite a bit. And you see on the far right, that's the statewide average, and then you see Edgecombe and Nash. So Nash County has considerably more money coming in from earnings than Edgecombe, and then you see that personal transfers are considerably bigger in Edgecombe than Nash. And when I say personal transfers, I mean money coming in from the federal government. So that's Social Security checks, that's any type of disability checks that are coming in from the federal government. You can think about that one of two ways. You can either say, Well, the fact that we have quite a bit of money coming in from federal transfers means that the economy is not doing that well, and that's certainly an appropriate interpretation. The other way to think about it is there is almost an economic floor to activity in the region because there is money coming in from elsewhere. In other words, the spending by people who are earning most of their money from federal transfers or from investments is sheltered from local economic shocks. And that means one of the things that I joke about where I live in Wilmington is I live close to downtown and restaurants are always busy in the middle of the week, fancy restaurants. I go, what do these people do for a living? And then I remember we have a lot of retirees and there's a lot of money that's coming into the community that's fueling some of that spending. So that may explain some of the trends that you're seeing. And then I dislike pie charts with a passion, but I think that they make sense here. So if you would just look at the dark blue portion here for Edgecombe, for Nash, and for North Carolina. This is data for 2023 from BEA. So for Edgecombe, it shows 45%. So that means 45% of all of the money flowing in the area is coming from wages and salaries. For Nash, it's 56%. For North Carolina as a state, it's 60%, right? So this is 2023 numbers. So I'm going to show you now where these numbers were in 2010. And what you see is that there's been a reversal in Edgecombe County in particular, where there was a fairly big decline of the share of the money flowing around that's actually coming from earnings. Not to give you a headache, but I'm just going to go back to 2023, that way you can see it. So Edgecombe went from 45%, this is 45% of all of the money in Edgecombe County in 2023 coming from earnings, and then you go back to 2010 and it was 52%, right? So significantly more money is coming in from federal transfers and from investments than before. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. This is data from the American Community Survey, and it's probably the most detailed data about social and economic characteristics. This is simply the share of the population over the age of 65, because I was curious to see, and unfortunately this is, because this is yearly data, they only survey communities that have more than 60,000 people, so this is only for Nash County. And the error bars, what you see there are the 95% error bars, and so you can ignore them. You have about 20% of your population that's over the age of 65, because I was curious if you've experienced the same demographic shifts that have happened in some other parts of the state. Median home values, at least according to the ACS, have obviously climbed up quite a bit, and they're at $210,000. But I wanted to talk about this because I think that this is interesting, because we talk about this affordability crisis and rents climbing up significantly in a lot of parts of the country. Median rents, again, error bars are gigantic. So if you trust the point estimates, they're about $900. But this is probably the thing that I found interesting. The share of the population, so we think about people being rent burdened if they pay more than 35% of their income towards rent. And in Nash County, roughly 1 out of 4 people are paying more than 35% of their income towards rent. However, that number does not seem to have been impacted by the pandemic. In a lot of communities across the state, we've seen that the share of the population paying 35% or higher has climbed quite a bit. Here, it seems fairly stable. I want to show you a couple of things about employment, which I've talked about. These are different scales. You see Nash County on the right and Edgecombe on the left. And the thing that I really want you to look at is, this is county level data, so it comes out with a lag. The data shows, so this is the last month for which we have data is March. This is showing you two things. One is both counties have less employment than 2019, but over the last year, we've seen this increase in employment in both counties, and it's coming from a lot of different sources, right? And so there are some small sectors that are starting to grow, and so these are growth rates. So the numbers you're seeing there are percentage growth rate, March 2024 relative to March 2023. And then you can see there is quite a bit of variation in growth rate in both Nash and Edgecombe County. Federal government, I don't know what's going on. Some of you may know, but it seems that federal government employment increased quite a bit in Edgecombe and decreased quite a bit in Nash. If any of you know why, I would be very curious. I really like showing this map. I love maps. This is average wages, average weekly wages at the state level. By county, there are 30 counties in the state where average weekly wages are $1,000 or more. Nash County is one of those. Average weekly wages are $1,077, and in Edgecombe they're about a little more than $800. But we talked about those pockets of prosperity. There is considerable variation, and towards the northeast portion of the state, you see wages being quite depressed. This is growth rate at the state level, March 2023 to March 2024. Again, while North Carolina has experienced this massive wave of growth, there is a lot of variation. There are 100 counties, there are haves and have-nots, metropolitan areas, and counties that are near metropolitan areas have performed remarkably well, and then we see other parts of the state that have not. The other thing that's important to note here is that the growth rates have moderated quite a bit. 2 years ago, we were seeing a lot of counties growing at 6, 7, 8%. We're no longer seeing much of that. And this is the ranking of population growth between 2022 and 2023. Again, stealing from Jeff, pockets of prosperity. So you see number 1 there, that's Brunswick County. That's the fastest growing county in the state, and in fact, one of the fastest growing counties in the country. What's happening in Brunswick County is absolutely remarkable. I'm going to show you a picture in a second that's mind-blowing, at least to me. I created it, I show it a lot, and it still blows my mind. There's been about $500 million of income that's been injected into Brunswick County in 1 year as a result of migration. If you take the income of individuals that have moved into Brunswick County, and you take out the income of individuals that have moved out of Brunswick County, you find that there's been an injection of $500 million because the individuals who are moving in are so much richer than the individuals who are moving out and the residents of the place. Just to give you a number, and I'm about to show it to you for Nash and Edgecombe as well. In Brunswick County, the average household income of people that move into the area is $130,000. The average household income of people that live in Brunswick County is about $85,000. And that's been happening now for years and years and years, which means that asset prices are being driven by this massively high income of incomers. And so you don't have that problem, which is really interesting. I'm just going to draw your attention to 2 bars, the green one and the red one. The green one is showing you average household income of out-of-state migrants. So out of all of the people that move into Nash and Edgecombe, only about 20% are coming in from out of state. So like I said, this is data from the IRS, and it allows you to see how much people make that move into different counties and whether they moved from in-state or out of state. The thing that's interesting here is the profiles of people that move into your respective counties who are moving from out of state are making considerably more money than the ones who are moving from within the state. But you don't see this shift in income that a lot of other communities are experiencing because the income of out-of-state movers essentially resembles the income of the residents of the area, which is really interesting. And then the other thing is the share of out-of-state migrants is still fairly low in both counties. And this, I keep saying this is my favorite, this is really an important graph. This is the graph that's showing income injections as a result of migration. So the 400, so I'm just picking on Brunswick County, the 487 is $487 million. So that's how much more money is in Brunswick County as a result of migration once you take out the income of out-migrants and you add in the income of in-migrants. In your 2 respective counties, you're in the positive, meaning migration's been a good thing. It's not a huge number, but Nash County has experienced an $11 million injection as a result of migration, meaning the income of in-migrants exceeds the income of out-migrants, but not by very much. And then Edgecombe, it was about $3.7 million. So again, it's positive, not really big, but the migration story is a really important part of the story to understand because you can't understand how much money is in your community unless you understand where the money comes from. And wages are only a partial story to this. I'm going to close, I'm sure you're eager to listen to the mayor, by just talking about the housing market a little bit. I said that the housing market is broken. At the national level, roughly 3 out of 10 homes have experienced a price cut. Now, that sounds high, and it sounds like maybe it's a good thing. Price cuts are tiny. One of the things that we're seeing is that homes have appreciated by $200,000, $300,000, and the price cuts are in the range of $5,000, $10,000. That's one of the reasons. And at the local level, we're basically seeing 31, 32% of homes haven't experienced a price cut. So there's no doubt that the market is shifting away from sellers and maybe slightly towards buyers, but this is not some sort of massive correction, at least not yet, because again, we have really, really low inventory and most people are sitting on an incredible amount of equity. So we don't have a ton of distressed sellers, right? So for people that are looking for the 20% correction, it's going to be incredibly difficult to happen because a ton, Redfin showed some estimates that something like 7 out of 10 homeowners have 3% mortgages or lower, which means they're not super keen to trade that 3% for even a 6% or a 5.5%. And this is really interesting. Kenneth and I were talking about this. This is the ratio of list to sale, or sale to list, sorry. If the market was still incredibly hot, this ratio would be 1 or considerably more than 1. One of the things that's been puzzling for a lot of people is that this ratio has stayed really, really close to 1, meaning that the sale to list ratio is below 1, but it's stayed sticky. And the reason that it stayed sticky is because the price cuts are actually very, very small. And so, yes, they're happening. We're no longer seeing pockets of the country where this ratio is 1.5 or 1.75 like we saw for a while, but it's changing. And then lastly, Zillow is unbelievably bullish on housing prices. They basically think that housing prices, even in parts of the country like Florida, that is seeing some fairly significant corrections, are going to go up. As I've mentioned, they think that the Rocky Mountain Metro is going to experience a 4.5% increase in housing prices between October 2024 and October 2025. Again, every forecasting agency from Wells Fargo to Redfin are thinking that prices are going to go up. Doesn't mean that that's going to happen, but there seems to be a lot of bullishness. I've said a ton of things. I've bored you to death. I want to tell you just one last thing about this, that middle point that I always like to close with. To me, thinking really closely about infrastructure is massively important. Communities that have grown really fast, the easy growth is behind them. Communities that are potentially slated to grow, like yours, need to think really carefully about housing, you need to think really carefully about infrastructure, and you need to think about the path forward. And to me, those are fundamentals that cannot be ignored. People are footloose, people are moving, responding to opportunity, and attracting people, retaining them, attracting firms, retaining them, comes at the cost of making sure you invest in amenities, making sure you invest in infrastructure. If I can help you with anything, if you need help with economic forecasting or economic impact analysis, or you want to email me and yell at me, do that. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful day.
So we'll go ahead and wrap up the panel with Mayor Robertson.
Good morning, and thank you for being here today. You know, it's quite an honor to share this space with dedicated, talented individuals, and let me start by expressing my deep appreciation for Dr. Katabi, Dr. Fox, and Mrs. Green for their insight and invaluable perspectives that they've shared. Let's give them another round of applause. It's been quite enlightening and quite revealing to us. And your work and your leadership have inspired us to think boldly as we tackle the challenges and embrace the opportunities ahead of us here in the Rocky Mountain region. As someone who calls this region home, as a native, a resident, an entrepreneur, and a public official, I am continually moved by our resilience and vision that define our community. Each of you plays a vital role in the story, whether as business owners, investors, employees, or stakeholders. Together, we are architects of progress, weaving our knowledge experience, and ideas into the fabric of our shared future. Most importantly, we bring the spirit that propels our region forward. Thanks to that collective effort, Rocky Mount continues to grow and to thrive. Today, I'm excited to highlight some of the accomplishments that make this a time of pride and momentum for our region, and while also exploring the opportunities that await us in 2025 and beyond. And let's celebrate what we've achieved, and let's set our sights on an even brighter future. Mrs. Green's presentation and Dr. Fox's remarks hit at the heart of one of our region's most pressing challenges, and that's connecting our neighbors to the wealth of opportunities available right here in Rocky Mount in our region. We are fortunate to live in a community where job prospects span a variety of issues, industries, and yet we still face a disconnect between those opportunities and the people who can fill them. As of September, our regional unemployment rate sits at a healthy 4.6%. But beneath that figure lies a concerning trend. Total local employment is down by about 320 jobs since the beginning of this year. At the same time, I hear from employers across our region who are struggling to fill positions, whether in manufacturing, healthcare, technology, and beyond. So what's the good news? Good news is we're not without solutions. The incredible work being done by our local schools, community colleges, and North Carolina Wesleyan University is paving the way for progress. These institutions are not just educating, they're equipping our workforce with tools, training, and confidence to step into meaningful careers close to home. In addition, a commuter bus initiative is progressing. Initially, we envisioned this between Rocky Mount and Raleigh, and it is a joint effort by a number of community leaders to improve transportation options for qualified workers commuting from outside our community to key manufacturing that's located here. And over the years, I envisioned this effort growing, expanding our workforce base and connecting all of Eastern North Carolina with Rocky Mount as the hub. If we close this gap, we can connect our talented residents to the abundant opportunities that we possess here. It will mean more than just filling jobs. It will strengthen families, support businesses, and lay the foundation for long-term economic growth within our region. Tackling this challenge demands a collective effort, one that brings together leaders, organizations, and communities across our region. And as Mayor of Rocky Mount, I'm constantly reminded of the incredible power of teamwork. The progress we achieve is not the result of a single entity, but a shared commitment among many. And I'm deeply grateful for the leadership of our City Council, whose vision guides us, and for the tireless work of our city staff, who turn that vision into action. But our success doesn't stop at city limits. It's amplified by the collaboration of our neighbors in Nash County and in Edgecombe County and the surrounding towns. And together we are forced to be reckoned with, united in our efforts to secure opportunities for each of our communities. Organizations like the Rocky Mount Area Chamber of Commerce, the Carolinas Gateway Partnership are vital allies in this mission. They work tirelessly to successfully position our region as a contender in the highly competitive markets for jobs and investment, locally, nationally, and even globally. When we pool our resources, expertise, and determination, there's no challenge we can't overcome, no opportunity too big to seize. So let's take a moment to applaud the outstanding efforts of the Nash County Board of Commissioners and their economic development team. Over the past year, they've delivered more than $797 million in new investment for our region, laying the foundation for at least 222 new jobs as these projects take shape. This is not just an economic development, it's a testament to planning strategically and a commitment to growth. Nash County's dynamic approach is already bringing exciting new facilities to Middlesex and Nashville, specifically GXP Storage. And I want to recognize and thank one of our largest employers here in the area for their transformative $580 million investment in our community. I'm grateful to the Cummins Rocky Mount Engine Plant for their continued support and growth. Add this to the expansions of LS Tractor, Crump Naturals, and others. It is clear that Nash County is setting the pace for regional progress. We also celebrate the remarkable collaboration between Nash County and the town of Nashville in driving economic momentum. A shining example of this partnership is the expansion of Ripe Revival. It's an agricultural company with local roots and global reach. Founded in Nash County native Will Pernidi, Ripe Revival has revolutionized how local farmers maximize their crop yield and market potential. From its humble beginnings in Rocky Mount to an ambitious plans for an innovative campus in Nashville. This company embodies the spirit of growth and ingenuity that defines our region. And let's not forget Nash County's connection to the broader research triangle to the west. We're grateful for the cooperative efforts of Nash County, the towns of Nashville, Spring Hope, Middlesex, and Bailey, which have fostered growth in diverse areas, residential, commercial, industrial, and even in the arts. A perfect example is soon to open Spring Hope Studios, a beacon of creativity and culture that reflects the vibrant future that we are building together. It's this kind of vision and this kind of teamwork that propels our region forward and strengthens our place on the map. In the City of Rocky Mount, progress isn't just a goal, it's a shared mission. Our City Council and staff, working hand in hand with our economic development partners, are laying the groundwork for a brighter, more dynamic future. Together, we're not only seizing opportunities for growth, but creating them, ensuring that our city continues to thrive as a hub of innovation and of possibility. We're immensely grateful for the ongoing efforts of the Rocky Mount Area Chamber of Commerce, whose leadership has been instrumental in attracting new businesses that serve our residents and elevate our city status as a vibrant destination for commerce. Their hard work has paid off, and in the past year alone, Rocky Mount proudly welcomed 24 new businesses and celebrated the expansion of 37 existing businesses. These investments, totaling over $64 million, have added more than 250 jobs to our community. This progress is reflected of the arrival of new neighbors like Rural King and Wawa, as well as vital additions to our downtown landscape, such as Complete Kids, and it provides essential services to youth from across our region. Now, downtown Rocky Mount isn't just a place, it's a gold mine of opportunity and a beating heart of our city's revival. At the heart of this transformation is the Rocky Mount Event Center, a beacon of opportunity and excitement. And since its opening, the Event Center has drawn hundreds of thousands of visitors and generated millions of dollars in economic impact for our region. And it stands as a testament to what's possible when we invest in our future. Picture this, the Rocky Mount Event Center draws nearly 3,500 visitors each week, creating an annual economic impact of $22 million. Add that to over 4,000 weekday employees filling our city center, from corporate leaders like the City of Rocky Mount and PNC Bank, to beloved local spots like NABS, Loretta Coffee House, Mo and D's. Downtown is indeed brimming with potential. Let's not forget the residents. Over 400 occupied unit housing houses more than 800 people in downtown, and they're all ready to embrace downtown Rocky Mount. But we're just getting started. With new shops, eateries, and entertainment venues on the horizon, downtown is set for a renaissance, harkening back to a yesteryear of glory days. So this most exciting news comes to the use of the new downtown major investment program, providing $500,000 for each of 3 projects. One at 201 South Washington Street have 16 apartments upstairs with 8,700 square feet of retail space at ground level. Another on Southwest Main having 20 apartments upstairs with 17,500 square feet of retail space at ground level. Both from New South Ventures and finally Legacy Lofts from Duke Construction that will transform 216 South Washington Street into 2 commercial spaces, totaling about 1,400 square feet available on the first floor and 12 luxury studio residential units upstairs. With each unit to be about 500 square feet to 550 feet in size, these projects are expected to invest over $19 million in downtown Rocky Mount. The numbers speak for themselves, with strategic investments in infrastructure and a focus on attracting innovative concepts. Downtown Rocky Mount is set to become the vibrant epicenter of commerce and culture that we all dream of. So buckle up, Rocky Mount, because the city is indeed on the rise, and downtown is leading the charge, and it's time to roll up our sleeves and turn this district into a shining jewel. But we're not stopping there. Looking ahead, we're preparing to announce a major development project for city-owned land, at the intersection of Thomas Betts Parkway, with plans for industrial and commercial use that will generate, we hope, at least $25 million in private investment and over $5 million of annual economic impact for the city and its region. At the same time, we remain steadfast in our commitment to addressing areas of our city that have endured disinvestment and economic neglect. Every corner of Rocky Mount matters, and our city council and staff are dedicated to fostering growth and equity across all neighborhoods. This is a pivotal moment for our city, a time when vision meets action, collaboration yields real measurable results, and together we're building a city where success is shared, progress is celebrated, and the best is yet to come. Our industrial success story wouldn't be possible without the incredible work of the Carolinas Gateway Partnership and the unwavering support of Edgecombe County and the town of Tarboro. For more than 30 years, this collaboration has been a cornerstone of our region's growth, and today it stands as a model of what vision and partnership can achieve. Decades ago, we joined forces to transform Kingsborough Industrial Park into a destination for world-class manufacturing and logistics. Located just 10 minutes east of Rocky Mount, Kingsborough has grown into a powerhouse of economic activity, attracting significant investing and created thousands of jobs. It has become a key player in connecting our region to the global market. This August, we reached an exciting new milestone with the announcement of Natron Energy as Kingsborough's newest tenant. Natron's revolutionary production facility will lead way in manufacturing the next generation of industrial batteries. Environmentally safe and made with domestically sourced materials, their $1.4 billion investment doesn't just bring cutting-edge technology to our doorstep, but it puts Rocky Mount and the region at the forefront of one of America's most promising emerging industries. We eagerly await the continued progress in the announcements from Natron in the coming year. But the story doesn't end there. Edgecombe County and the town of Tarboro continue to build on this momentum, in addition to fostering ongoing success of their established manufacturers. They are securing new opportunities that will shape our future. A shining example is Tarboro's recent sale of industrial land to Amazon for a local delivery transfer facility, bringing 50 to 100 new jobs. This global leader in retail and data services is set to bring transformative development to our region, and we're eager to see the impact of this partnership unfold. Edgecombe County's efforts demonstrate what's possible when we combine forward-thinking leadership with bold action, and together we're providing our region isn't just keeping pace, it's setting the standard for growth, innovation, and an opportunity on a global scale. The future is bright, and Edgecombe County is leading the charge. Among the many successes that we celebrate, one stands out as a game changer for our region, and that's the continued development of CSX's Carolina Connector. The state-of-the-art intermodal hub positions the Rocky Mount region as a gateway for logistical activity, connecting us seamlessly to vital ports like Richmond, Wilmington, Charleston, and Savannah. With these connections, we are the driving force in the movement of goods across the Southeast and beyond. While the most recent national election signals potential challenges ahead for international trade, I remain confident in the Carolina Connector's role as a cornerstone for economic growth. This facility strengthens our ability to distribute products efficiently and reinforces our region's reputation as a major exporter of industrial and agricultural goods. It's more than infrastructure, it's a catalyst for opportunity. One of the many assets our region has that's tremendously helped us in attracting and growing new businesses is the Rocky Mount Wilson Airport. Operations have quintupled since 2021, with flights growing from over 10,000 in 2021 to 54,000 in 2024. Our growth isn't just about logistics, it's also about creating new possibilities in housing. To Despite its challenging national market, our region continues to shine as a balanced and attractive option for both buyers and sellers. Listings are growing, and we're seeing a steady price across the region of $140 per foot. Our sale to list ratio is close to 100%, and once homes go on the market, they're usually sold within 2 months. Excitingly, new housing developments are on the horizon with projects set to rise soon that will expand home ownership opportunities for current residents and welcome new families to our community. These developments reflect the energy and optimism driving our region forward, a testament to the progress that we are making together. The Rocky Mountain region is building more than just homes and infrastructure. We're building a brighter future, one connection, one opportunity, one family at the time. And maybe the most impactful opportunity that came our way was the once-in-a-lifetime moment to shape the future of our city when over 300 acres of prime real estate at US 64 and I-95 became available for sale. About 100,000 cars pass daily by this site, highlighting its strategic importance. And our city took a very decisive action to secure this land, consolidating 336 acres into one expansive site, an extraordinary achievement that opens doors to what I believe will be endless possibilities. What makes this site truly remarkable is its potential to become a shining example of multifaceted, multi-use economic development. It's not just a piece of land, it's a canvas for opportunity, strategically positioned to drive growth and prosperity for our city and its region. The city's vision for this property is ambitious, yet intentional. We aim to fully harness its potential, building upon the significant investments already made by the North Carolina Department of Transportation, including the addition of the new I-95 exit at Sunset Avenue. These enhancements have transformed the area into a prime gateway for progress, setting the stage for something extraordinary. Our commitment is clear. We are determined to ensure this site becomes a catalyst for capital investment, business creation, job growth, and long-term financial benefits that will uplift our entire community. With an open and inclusive strategy, we're ready to welcome all prospects and partners who share in our vision. And here's the exciting part. An announcement about the first stage of this development is just around the corner, so please stay tuned. I know you've all heard that, but it really is coming just around the corner. And because it has the power to shape the future of Rocky Mountain and beyond. So this past year has been a testament to what we can achieve together, tackling challenges head on, embracing new opportunities, and laying the foundation for a stronger, more vibrant future. The progress we've made is undeniable, and it's only the beginning. To everyone who has contributed to building our shared vision and our region, your dedication, your creativity, and hard work inspire me every day. And together we are creating a legacy of growth and resilience that will benefit generations to come. As we look forward and look toward 2025, I am filled with optimism and excitement for what lies ahead. Great things are on the horizon, and I have no doubt that we will continue to rise together. Thank you.
So it is now just a few minutes after 10, and so in respect of time, we're going to hold off on questions and answers. We hope that we want everybody to be able to continue with their day and be respectful of your time. So at this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Ferris for some concluding remarks.
Thank you, Kenneth, and thank each of you for your attendance today. This has been an amazing kickoff for the morning for us. I want to thank our presenters. And in your name, we will be giving a check to Deals on Wheels to help serve those who need our assistance, especially during this time of holiday season and cold weather. But again, thank you for your attendance, and we look forward to seeing you and having another really great report back next year. Thank you.